Hi, folks. I think this is going to be a very important week. If the intel that I'm getting is true, there's going to be some very, very interesting things come out this week. So what I'm trying to do is to get a couple of presentations out that are going to set the stage for you to be, queued up to listen to what's coming. So this what we're going to do right now in just the next few minutes is how we've been enslaved. It's going to kind of give you the overview of how we lost our republic and how we became a democracy. And then tomorrow we're going to bring up what I call the follow-up to this, which is basically how all of the false flag events have been inflicted on us that have led us to where we are today, that we're on the brink of absolute financial collapse. But it's the best thing that could possibly have happened because we're winning. This has been going on for decades, and we're finally to the point that the whistleblowers are ready to come out en masse. And when that happens, the people's eyes are going to be opened, and we're going to find out that this reset is going to occur, I think, probably in my mind, by the end of the year. And we're going to get back control of our financial system, get back control of our political system, our corporations, our banks, all of it. So this is just to kind of say, for those of you who don't know history, this is how the enslavement system kind of started in America. So let's go to the next slide and let's start to dig into this, if you don't mind. So basically, we are a shadow government. We haven't had an honest election in close to 100 years, and we're not the only nation. Basically, the global shadow elite have controlled election processes in countries all over the world, and once that happens, they put their own government in who is not representing the people, but representing the interest of the global financial system. It means the bankers, that means the corporations, and that means the politicians and the elite that have been put in power to do what? To basically represent the interest of a global government, not the interest of individual sovereign nations or the people thereof. So here's a quote that I want you to basically think about that kind of sets it all. It's from J.P. Warburg, and this was before the United States Senate in February 17th, 1950, and he was representing the global financial elite. And basically, I take it as a threat against the government of the United States. He says, we shall have government whether or not you like it. That's a threat in my mind. The only question is whether government will be by consent, or world government will be by consent or by conquest. So there we are. Any way we have to do it, no matter how many we have to kill, no matter what they have to do, we're going to have a global one world government, which I call a global one world dictatorship. Let's go on to the next slide. So this is where I want you to start. I want you to think about how do we get to where we are? And it starts before we're even a nation. It starts in an event called the 100-Year War. It was a war between England and France, and England went bankrupt, and they went to the Rothschilds and asked for money. And basically, they went to Merrill Rothschild, who said basically these famous words: he who controls money controls the government. And other people have said it this way: who controls money controls the world. And so that's it, control the money. And how do they do it? It's right here, right before your face. The inception of the first central bank of England. And here's what it is. I think I'll read this. England is bankrupt and borrows money from the Rothschilds on the condition, you ready for it? That the central bank of England is established. And I'm going to break here for a second and take you back forward. And basically, of that, what was it said? It was Stalin who said implementing a central bank is 90% of implementing communism. And so basically, they established the central bank, and the condition was that the Rothschilds print the money for England, and every single solitary note that was printed carried a debt obligation, driving England into perpetual debt. And with that, they had an epiphany. They had a realization that if they could cause wars, drag them out, drag nations into debt, fund both sides of the war, then both of the nations would probably go bankrupt, and then they could inflict them with the central bank. And if you don't have sovereign currency, you don't have a sovereign nation. And if you don't have a sovereign border, you don't have a sovereign nation. So with that, the whole strategy of how they wanted to control the world was birthed. Cause wars, drag them out, drive nations into debt, drive them into a central banking system, control the printing of the money, fiat currency based on nothing, drive a debt obligation to where the people eventually become absolute debt slaveries, and then they control the world. And that's what's been happening in the world since before the United States was even founded. Let's go on to the next slide. And it's money out of thin air. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about a man who ought the heck to know what he's talking about. His name was Sir Joseph Stamp, and he was the director of the Central Bank of England in the 1920s. And what did he have to say? I just love this when I came across it. The modern banking system manufactures money out of nothing. Bankers own the earth. If you want to continue the slaves of bankers and pay the cost of your own slavery, let them continue to create money and to control credit. So that's it. Basically, they print the money, cause inflation, cause deflation, cause stock market collapses. And then when all that happens and the free fall is in place, they dry up the credit and bang, the trap is set and you have just been taken to lunch. So that's what it is. That's the system of slavery that has enslaved the United States and nations all over the world to where we're the point that literally every major country in the world has now been taken over by a central bank of England, and basically the global financial elite control the money. He controls the money, controls the world. So that's the system that we have to break. We have to get out from under the Fed. It has to be gone. We have to print our own sovereign currency, which we printed for a while. And basically we have to go back to a new economic system. No, not a new system. Back to the system that we had where we didn't have the Federal Reserve income tax and the IRS, and all we had was a simple sales tax. And that's what we're going back to. That's what's in the SARA, and that's what's going to be rolling out within the next few months. And that's been trying to be burst since the 1990s. Let's go on down to the next slide, and we'll break this down a little further. And this is one of my favorite heroes in the entire world. And it just so happens that Donald Trump follows him as well. Sun Tzu, The Art of War. He was basically, I think, in my mind, the greatest military strategist in the history of the entire world. And he won something that I just can't believe. Through strategy, he managed to have 30,000 men that had defeated an army of 300,000 men. And what did he say? He said this: no nation has ever benefited from prolonged war. So the whole idea that we have perpetual wars that last for decades, he's telling you, if you see that, it's absolutely designed to control you and to enslave you. And why does he say it's bad? Because it depletes what? Assets. And it affects morale. And at some point, the cost of victory is too great. Well, it's too great if you want to win, but it's perfect if you want to enslave a nation and if you want to enslave the world. So a couple of examples of what they've been doing to us is go to Vietnam War. That lasted from 1959 to 1975. And then let's go down to the War on Terror. And when that was announced, that was basically what we did when we had 9/11 and we declared war in Iraq. And Bush came on the next day and says, we're going to war. And it's going to be a generational war. And it lasted from 2001 to 2021. And both of those wars drove America deep into debt and basically brought us into the situation where the swamp controlled the money and where the swamp controlled us. But all that's changing. The good news is the swamp is about to be drained and we are going to get our freedom back. So let's go to the next slide. And we're going to dig in and try to get a better understanding of what debt-free currency is, of the fiat system that enslaves us. And so now we're all the way back to the founding of America, and we're back to Benjamin Franklin. And here's what Benjamin Franklin had to say. The real reason for the Revolutionary War, are you ready for it? Was that in 1773, this is before we were a nation, King George did what? He outlawed our interest-free currency of the American colonies. We were still colonies, forcing us to borrow money at interest, basically creating the Central Bank of England. The reason we came here was so that we wouldn't have taxation without representation, so that we could own land, and so that we could be free people, and we wouldn't have the resources of the world controlled. And basically, there it is. They use currency to basically enslave us. And so it's just like Joseph Stamp said, money was the mechanism by which they control the masses. So let's go on down to the next slide. And now we're going to see a little bit more of how they basically control it. So basically, here's what happens when you have a fiat system. At anytime they choose, they can cause inflation, they can cause deflation, they can cause boom cycles and bust cycles, and they can control when those cycles start and when they end. And so they put their money in, and the bubble goes up and up and up and up and up, and they make money selling whatever it is they're selling, and then they get out before they crash it. And in the process, they have wage suppression. So we're always behind the curve, and they create more and more and more taxes. That's part of the tenets of communism, and basically, what happens then? They cause a collapse. You lose your job. You can't pay your mortgage payment. You can't pay your taxes. And guess what? They come and take your property. So the dream of American ownership is a false dream. But that's going to change. And we're going to get into the next few weeks. So basically, what happens? Here's what I say to people. You own a home? And they say, yeah, I own a home. Great. I love it. And I say, no, you don't own a home. There's not a person in America that owns a home, not a single solitary person, because all you have to do is create one of these events, cause you to lose your job, get behind, and then they come and take your house. And let's say you owe $10,000 in back taxes. Well, do they sell your house and take their $10,000 and give you the proceeds? Nah, they don't do that. They basically sell your house, and 9 out of 10 times, if it's a good house, the people who get it are the insiders. And basically, for $10,000, they might take a $500,000 house and leave you impoverished. So what's the solution? Get the heck out of the fiat system, where they can no longer have inflation and deflation and boom cycles and suppress things and drive us into perpetual debt that leaves us just the slaves. So what's the answer? Go to a commodity-backed system, because commodities cannot be manipulated because they have intrinsic value on their own. And now let's go down and look at the stock market, which I call the biggest roulette wheel in the world, because it's manipulated from the beginning to the end by the people who have the power, who own the computers, who basically manipulate everything. So here's what happens under the current stock market system. They allow puts and calls, and they basically are able to manipulate the market by having millions of money that can be transferred at the push of a button, and we're just the poor suckers out there who are just taken advantage of. So what would be a better system for the stock market? It would be a system based on earnings and on growth and on dividends, without the speculation that comes along with puts and calls and institutional manipulation. All that's coming. We're going to get the SARA. We're going to get a new economic system. Our money is going to be based on something of value, on commodities, and basically we're going to change the entire stock market to where it cannot be manipulated. So we're winning this war, despite what you think. I know there's all kinds of shenanigans going on, and it's going to be going on for a while yet. But if you really follow this like I follow it, we are winning. But what we need for all of you out there to wake up and to be informed. And when this thing comes down, we need you to know what's going on, because guess what? We're going to have CEOs by the droves leave, people at banks leave by the droves, and probably 90% of the people in Washington are going to go. So what do we need? We need people who are qualified to step into those positions to represent not the global financial elite, but we the people. So you need to basically be paying attention. We are going to need an entire army to fill our banks, to fill our corporations, and to fill all the political positions around the country at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level. We need an army of informed, educated people that can stand up for the rights of the American citizenry and not the rights of the global financial elite. So please join our army. Get yourself informed. Watch our show. Watch other people's shows. Buy my book, which was ordained by God to basically tell you everything you need to know. Let's go to the next slide if we could. And here's the new system that's coming. And I want to tell you a quick story for those who haven't been following me for a long time. I died in 1968 at a motorcycle wreck, and I visited God, and he laid out what my entire life was going to be about. And then 3 years ago, I get these visitations since then, not very often, maybe once a year, maybe every couple of years, maybe once in a while, 2 or 3 a year. But basically, whatever it is, it comes between 5 and 5:15. And when I hear it, it has never one time not come to 100% prophecy. If whatever he tells me is going to happen, happens. So 3 years ago, he said, I promised you that because you've been faithful and done what I told you to do and perform the assignment that I gave you, that I was going to give you the ability to prosper in the financial transfer of wealth that was coming. I'm going to give you and I'm going to give my other servants an opportunity to participate in the transfer of wealth from the wicked to the righteous. Here's what you need to do. So listen, this is something for everyone out there. God wants to bless you. He told me in 2 different visitations that he was going to give me the opportunity and invest in what would be the new world's reserve currency. He said no individual has ever in the history of the world had the opportunity to invest in the world's reserve currencies, always been held for the elite. And then in the next visitation, I'm 76 years old. I didn't even know what he was talking about. He said, go find out about something called crypto. Find out in particular about something called XRP. And I did. And it turns out that that is going to fulfill that first visitation. XRP, if you go out and do your homework, all the handwritings on the wall, it's going to replace the fiat currency system that we have now. And it is going to be the new world's reserve currency. And that is going to make whoever invests in it incredibly wealthy. Now, I have to tell you, I didn't tell you I was a financial advisor. I told you I didn't even know what crypto was until God came and talked to me. But I know God when I hear him, and I know that this is what he's laying out, and the facts are now substantiating that. So go do your own homework, and there's one caveat I give you. God is going to bless those who are going to be willing to allow the money to flow through them to bless others. So if you want the optimal benefit to come to you financially, then you need to search your heart and you need to say, am I willing to be a steward? Which takes us to the story of the princes. So the master left and he gave money to his servants, and one of them buried it in the ground. He didn't make any interest, and he came back and he took that away from him and gave it to the one that invested the money the wisest. So be a wise steward and basically think about as this changes and transition, God wants to use you to bless others. Go research and find out what XRP is. I think if you do, it will bless you. And how it's going to work is very simply. We're going to go to a digital currency, and it's going to be backed on gold and silver and boatloads of oil and trucks of wheat and all kinds of commodities. And to use that as a currency, something significant has to happen. You have to be able to break it down. You can walk in a grocery store and buy groceries with a gold coin worth $4,000 or $5,000. But what XRP does, what quantum computing does, God showed me this system back in 68 when I died. He said it can't happen now because we have to have technologies that we don't have. Well, they're here now. We have quantum computers. We have XRP. We have XLM. We have all the things that we need to basically have the sophisticated system that can do what? Take any commodity in the world and break it down to the smallest fractional component humanly possible so that it can be used in trade to buy anything, to buy a house, to buy a fractional piece of the I can't even pronounce it, the Mona Lisa, to buy anything. So basically, that's the new system. And it's a system that cannot be manipulated because those commodities have inherent value. They're not like fiat currencies that are just a decimal point entered into a computer. So let's go on down to the next slide, and it's going to take us deeper into what the new economic system is going to look like. And like I said, it's commodity based. And people think of gold and silver, and you might want to look at those. And I'm going to give you a hint here because I'm trying to bless people. As God gives me things that I believe are absolutely true, I try to share them with people. So the history of gold and silver is gold is basically a store of wealth. But silver in this new technological age is absolutely the quintessential metal. So the ratios between gold and silver are out of historic alignment. And if you'll go do some homework, I think you'll find that, yes, though silver isn't sell for as much, the return on your investment is better on silver. So again, I'm not a financial advisor, but you can go out and do a little homework and you'll find out. And then down below, that picture shows copper and corn and wheat and everything you can imagine. Anything that is real, that is a commodity that can be used for something, that's what our economy is going to be based on. And it's all going to be driven, the rails of the system that create the new financial system, that create the currency that is going to be the world's reserve currency depends on technology, and it will be driven by XRP, which will create the liquidity to transfer millions, billions, and trillions of dollars around the world in a fraction of a second at almost no cost, at pennies, 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 pennies. Let's go to the next slide, and we're going to break it down and understand just a little deeper who our enemy is. So that first picture up on the upper left, that's England, the nation upon which the sun never set, the nation that controlled the world through what? Free trade. And what was free trade? Free trade. Look at those portions of those countries that are in red. Those were all colonies of England. And what did they do? They went in and they took the natural resources of those nations. They kept them dumb and ignorant. They didn't give them the infrastructure they needed. So they basically literally stole their natural resources. That's the basis of Western hegemony. And that is what went on for ages. And that created the wealthiest nation in the world at the time, the nation upon which the sun never set, and it made its money by stealing the natural resources from the people. Then we go over to that next picture, and what we see is basically England has the lion as their coat of arms, and what we see over here is this goes even further back, and the double-headed eagle that comes from Rome. And so that's what does that take us to next? It takes us to the Vatican, and we find out that if you go and do your homework, that symbol you see up in the upper left-hand corner that looks like a triangle or paperclip, that's also on the robe of the Pope, and that is a symbol for pedophilia. Go do your homework, find out the truth, dig down, don't believe me. And then if you go over to the EU and you go to your Bible and you go to the book of Revelation, you'll find that it was England who controlled us and still controls us and controls Canada. Canada is still under crown rule. And we're going to find out if we go to the book of Revelation that even though we view Europe as our ally, they're actually, according to the Bible, our mortal enemy. England is the lion, and they're to be the mouthpiece when we get to the combination beast that brings havoc upon the world. And Russia's the bear that destroys flesh, and Germany is in there, and the Vatican is in there, and all the symbology is there. Go do your homework. And then we go down below and we come to the Act of 1871, was where we went bankrupt and they took away our republic and inflicted us with the corporation that we're under now, which is the debt system that drives us into perpetual slavery with money that's based on nothing. And then the control center for that, since we're talking about money, there are the four biggest banks in the country right there, and they're controlling this every day of your life. And then we go back, and it was said by Lincoln that I fear the day when banks and corporations align, creating what we now call a corporatocracy that will enslave mankind. And that's exactly what has happened, exactly. And all of that culminates in what? Control of money, which controls the spheres of influence, which means it controls the banks, it controls the corporations, it controls the politicians, it controls the media, it controls the entertainment center. And that is what Donald Trump calls the swamp. And that is what is being drained. And that is how we're going to get our freedom. Let's go down to the next one. And that takes us to the 8 spheres of influence. If you'll go to the next slide, please. And here they are. There was a book written years ago talked about the 7 spheres of influence, but I consider that the missed one, and that is the military-industrial complex, because all of this slavery starts with causing wars and driving nations into debt so that then you can get control of the economic system. So I think the controls of influence are the military-industrial complex that creates the false flags that drive us into debt, and then it's taking over the economy and driving us into a central bank, and then it's buying our politicians, so that the illusion that we have the two-party system is false. We have, by and large, one-party system, a uniparty, because there's enough people that have been bought in Washington and in all of our government that when something really important comes down, the vote always falls in the favor of the global financial elite, not we the people. And then with the 501Cs and other things they've done, they've basically taken over our religious system. The people that were here to guide us basically they've also been taken over, and then we are in a constant state of brainwashing. They have a situation where they control all the outlets. They control the government. They control every source of information we have, the media, the entertainment center. And in the absence of any truth, what is Hitler say? If you tell a big enough lie and you tell it enough times, it becomes the truth. And we're just bombarded every day with the lie. And maybe we get a little bit of truth. So sometimes they tell us a little bit of truth mingled with a lie, mingled with a big lie. And when it's just done, we just have no idea what to do. And here's something that the communists said early on. They said America's too rich, too powerful to ever be taken down from the outside. We have to take them down from the inside. And how do we do that? We come in and we attack them from the end, and we attack their religious faith, their morality, their family, and their patriotism. And when they do, they'll rot like Sodom and Gomorrah from the inside, and then we will be able to take them down. That's why we have to get control of all these spheres of influence. And then, my God, the education system. We spend more money on education than any other nation in the world, and yet we rank 40th, not by accident, by design. And you millennials out there and you Generation Zs who are paying all of that money for your education, and you have all that debt associated with your college degree, and you get out and you find out, well, they didn't equip me to get a job, and now I got to pay all this debt, and I'm just barely surviving, and I can't buy a house. And I'm going to be doing several shows on the real estate market and how they're controlling us through that. So you find that you're sitting there and you're 25, you're 30, you're 35, and you might still be living at home in mom and dad's basement, and you don't have enough money to get married, and you don't have enough money to have a family, and you don't have enough money to have kids, and they're changing the entire complexion of the world by keeping you in such slavery that, what was the movie? It was called Failure to Launch. We have two whole generations that have been put purposely in a position where they have failure to launch. And then we have the one who's control of all the brainwashing, and that's the media and the entertainment center. Those are the spheres of influence that they control us, and every one of them is going to fall. So as the truth comes out, they're falling. So let's give you a couple of real quick examples that have been in the news recently. So Bud Light went broke. Woke, I should say. And man, the second that happened, I mean, their customers turned against them and they lost a fortune. And then Target did something similar and they lost billions. And then Cracker Barrel took off, changed their logo, and then they got in trouble. So basically, I want to point out to you, you have control because you're the customer who buys the things that generate the wealth, that causes the GDP, that allows them to control the spheres of influence. So as we get the truth, boycott these people. So let me take you back again in history. I want to tell you a story. We fought a Revolutionary War only to get our freedom, but then within 12 years to be under the central banking system again. There was a different alternative that was chosen by India. They had a man they rallied around. His name was Gandhi. He was a lawyer and a religious leader. We got a man we can rally around. His name is Donald Trump, and I believe he is absolutely fighting for the American people and for the people of all around the world. So what did Gandhi say? He said something like I was just leading up to. We'll get our freedom, and here's how we do it. It's real simple. Boycott England. Don't buy their crap. And basically, England folded and they gave them their freedom. What do you think Donald Trump is doing with all the tariffs? What do you think he's doing? He is leveraging the market. He's leveraging money. He's leveraging power. He's doing almost exactly what Gandhi did to get the freedom for India. We just need to follow this man. We just need to go out and look at what he's doing. He's the only president in my lifetime that made promises and kept them. Promises made, promises kept, and he even over-delivered. I mean, look at Barack Obama. When you listen to him, I mean, he sounded like he was going to unite the people, and he was going to pull us together, and he was going to bring this country back to economic stability. No, that was just the script that he was given to read. In fact, he divided us more than any other president we've ever had, and he managed to amass more debt in his time in office, $10 trillion, more than any of the 43 presidents that preceded him. So it's not what those sweet-sounding politicians say, it's what they do. And in my lifetime, we've had three presidents that tried to do what they said. One was Kennedy, they killed him. The second was Reagan, they tried to kill him. And the third is Trump, and they've been doing everything they can do to have character assassination, to keep him from running from office, or to, if necessary, kill him. Let's go on down to the next slide. And this is queuing us up for what we're going to do in our next segment. This is leading us into 9/11. And as we do that, I want you to see just how heinous these people are. So we're going to cover that in detail in the next piece. So I'm just going to go over it real quick. Basically, World War One. The idea is to drive a nation into war, bankrupt the countries that go in it, and then force them into a central bank, at which point they have lost their sovereignty. So if you go just come and see us on the next segment, and you're going to find out that the Lusitania was a setup. It was a false flag. There were munitions on that ship, and therefore it was a legitimate target, but that's what they used to bring us into the war. And then Pearl Harbor, basically, that was a setup as well. And basically, Franklin approached three admirals and said, I want you to park the Seventh Fleet where Japan is able to reach us. And we had Pearl Harbor, and that took us into the war. And there were reasons for both of them. It made America a lot of money and gave us a lot of power. And then we went over to Vietnam, and we find out that the Gulf of Tonkin was another false flag event. And then we go to, this is where the people really, I think, know the most, because almost everybody alive who's an adult today was alive when 9/11 hit 24 years ago. And so that's the one that most people are aware of. And so we're going to do an awful lot of deep dive into that in the next segment. But all of those are wars for profit, false flag events that have been used to drive us into debt. And then let's look at some numbers. So we go to the Lusitania, we go to World War One, 21 million people killed. Basically 20 million people wounded. Then we go to the Gulf of Tonkin. Well, we should go down to Pearl Harbor, I guess, next. 60 million people killed in World War II and 15 million wounded. And then we go to Vietnam, which was, I think it was from 1955 to 1975. That's what I call a perpetual war. 3.8 million killed, 3.9 million wounded, and then we go to Iraq, and 4.5 million killed, and we don't have very accurate results for the number of wounded. But basically, all of those, each and every one of those, was a war that was inflicted on the people through a false flag event to drive us deeper and deeper into debt and deeper into slavery. That's what we're going to cover in our next segment. So we'll go down to the last slide, and I'm just going to make it simple because I talk about this all the time. We're now at a point where basically the whistleblowers have been dripping information. Now it's going to be a tsunami. And why? Because the people who have been the people who've enslaved us, who we thought were our leaders, are going to start getting arrested. Chelsea Gavert's come out. We're going to talk about these things in detail in the next episode, and basically said, well, get ready, because the people who have been enslaving us are going to get arrested. So we're looking at warrants for Hillary, warrants for the Bushes, warrants for the Clintons. I mean, and on down it goes, and all the people that encircle them. And what we need is, when that happens, we need to have enough information out that the people can actually really identify and believe that these people really did do some very terrible things to us. So when they are arrested, it's justice happening. It's not politics. It's basically treason, and treason has consequences. And so that's why, if you haven't bought this book, God told me that I'd come out at the very end. 56 years I've been waiting for my hair to be salt and pepper, because that's when he said the tipping point would happen, then he'd bring me out. This book tells you what made America great, how we lost it, how we're going to get it back, and how we will be able to keep it if we have an informed public who is willing to stand up. We have to understand what a republic is. Most of the people in this country think we're a democracy. That's a communist order. A republic is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and it has specific requirements. You have to be educated. You need to have a moral foundation. You need to be able to vote your conscience, which means you need to be able to know the truth. And when you go to the polls, you need to be able to vote not for what's in your best interest, but what's in the best interest of the nation and the people as a whole. So with that, come back and see our next segment. We're going to dig deep And we're going to get you ready for when all these whistleblowers start stomach coming out. You'll be ready to not just brush it off, because you won't be the victim of cognitive dissonance. You'll have enough foundation that you'll be ready to listen. Your eyes will pop open, and basically we'll be ready to trigger this transition. So I think, if I'm going to guess, the next 2 months is going to be nothing but whistleblowers followed by arrest. And then that's going to take us into the period where we can drain the swamp and we can get back control of the economic system, and we'll get back our freedom, because a nation that has a secure border is sovereign. A nation that has secure currency is sovereign. So with that, I think that it's going to get scary. They're not just going to give up, but we're right on the brink of victory. But we need you guys to stand up, and we need you to be informed, and we need you to be active members, because here's what's going to happen. I want you to think about this, especially younger people. The bankers are going to get taken out. The CEOs are going to taken out. Probably 90% of all our politicians are going to be taken out. We need young people, people like you, the Generation Z people. We need people who are ready to step into those positions and be stewards for God, stewards for this nation. So you need to know what's going on. So when those openings come up, you can be the generation that leads America into its destiny, where we will be that shining light on the hill that we were always intended to be, the nation that showed the world what freedom looks like, the nation that spread Christianity around the world, and the nation that was responsible for the first industrial revolution, the nation that is going to be responsible for the greatest industrial revolution the world has ever seen, or I should say technological revolution, and the nation that God put on this earth in order to usher in his revival. So we are an anointed, chosen nation. And as I close that, why? Because the very first time we set foot on this continent as a trading group, it was in 1607, I think. They cut the mast off and dedicated the United States of America to God. And when the Pilgrims came over, before they ever got off the ship, they signed the Mayflower Compact, dedicating this nation to God. And basically, we have been God's chosen nation. And recently, most of you are not going to know this, but I'm involved with some people who, what did they do? They said, we need a new constitution. And what Trump was looking at what he put out a template for a new Declaration of Independence. These people went to Washington and they signed another they wrote another declaration of not of independence, but of committing America to God, and Donald J. Trump signed it. So every time we turn around, this nation bends a knee to God, and because of that, God has chosen us to lead the rest of the world into peace and prosperity. But to do that, you need to wake up, be informed, and be empowered to step into these positions when they become available, because we want the right people, the people who are going to be willing to basically do this for others, to be stewards of mankind, not greedy people like we have now. So with that, I'll see you next week. Please, before you go, sign up, subscribe, click the like button. So, because you know how it is. Basically, they do everything they can do to keep channels like this down. So please subscribe, and please push that like button, and please come back next week. And I may be getting down ahead of my skis here, but I want to make an announcement tentatively. But I've been in contact with 107, who I think of anybody out there has the most true, real information about what's going on. I think he is connected to Q and connected to the White House, and he's agreed to come on our show on Friday, barring difficulties. Now, he was a little sick when I talked to him the other day, so there's possibility he may not be able to make it, but if everything works out, he'll be on our show. And what he has said is this week is going to be a significant week. There's going to be all kinds of things coming out this week. So please sign up, tell people about this show, watch the next show about 9/11, and come back and watch the show with Juan, provided that he's able to come. He tells me it's going to be a deluge of truth coming out in this week. We're just beginning to have a tsunami of truth come out. So please follow us, join us. We'll see you next time.